You know that one person who shows up, looks at whatever just broke, burst pipe, dead engine, crashed system, someone completely falling apart, and goes quiet for a second. Doesn't spiral, doesn't freeze, doesn't reach for their phone with shaking hands. They just think. And then they start moving. And you're standing there watching them with that small, uncomfortable feeling you've never quite said out loud, wondering why your first instinct was panic and theirs was to get to work. Here's what I want you to know before we go any further. Nothing is wrong with you, but something is genuinely different about them. And once you understand what that difference actually is, you're going to stop seeing it as a personality type and start seeing it as something that was built piece by piece, experience by experience. And that matters because anything that was built can be built again. If any part of that landed, like this video and subscribe. This is exactly what this channel is for. So let's talk about where it actually comes from. In the late 1970s, a psychologist named Albert Bandura identified something he called self-efficacy. Strip away the academic language, and it's really just this: your belief that you are capable of handling what's in front of you. Not a general optimism, not a vague sense that things tend to work out. Something much specific. The feeling of, I've been in hard situations before and I found my way through them, and this thing in front of me is also findable. Bandura found that this belief alone, before any action is taken, dramatically changes how long someone will stay with a problem before giving up, and how much effort they pour in when it gets hard. Two people can have nearly identical skill levels, but the one with higher self-efficacy will persist longer, try harder, and come back after failure. The one without it will leave the problem earlier, often before they ever really started. So what created that belief in the first place? That's where it gets personal. Think about what happens the very first time a kid tries to fix something and it actually works. Not something big, something tiny. They wiggled the wire and the lamp came on. They pressed on the cut and the bleeding slowed. That moment does something to them that has nothing to do with the lamp or the cut. It rewires how they see themselves in relation to problems. Suddenly, the world isn't something that just happens to them. It's something they can reach into and change. Bandura called these moments mastery experiences, and research consistently ranks them as the single most powerful source of self-efficacy there is. Not being told you're capable, not watching someone else do it, actually doing it yourself with your own hands and having it work. That's the thing that sticks. And every time after that, when something breaks, the nervous system doesn't interpret it as a threat. It interprets it as a puzzle. Something that was working and then stopped. And if it stopped, there's a reason. And if there's a reason, it's findable. Around the same time, a psychologist named Julian Rotter was studying something he called locus of control, the degree to which a person believes their own actions determine outcomes, rather than luck or fate. And people who sit firmly on the internal end of that scale don't just handle broken things better. They're less likely to develop depression. They cope with stress in ways that don't involve dismantling their lives. They persist longer. The sense that your effort actually matters is one of the most psychologically protective things a person can carry. But most of these people were not born this way. It started from very specific moments, usually in childhood, where someone either handed them agency or left them no choice but to find it themselves. Sometimes it was a parent who said, "I'm not going to give you the answer, but I'll help you figure it out." And sometimes it was a parent who wasn't there at all, so the kid learned to figure it out alone. Both pathways lead to the same place, the understanding, practiced deep, that your effort moves things. Now, here's the part that surprises people because it looks like confidence from the outside, but it's actually something else entirely. When a fixer walks into a broken situation, they are not certain it's going to work out. They feel the same uncertainty you feel. What's different is what that uncertainty means to them. It doesn't feel like a verdict, it feels like a starting point. There's a psychological concept called tolerance of ambiguity, the ability to sit inside a situation where the answer isn't clear yet and not fall apart while you look for it. Most people treat uncertainty like an emergency in itself, like not knowing is already a kind of failure. People who struggle with ambiguity need resolution fast. They need to know it's going to be okay right now. And when that reassurance doesn't come, the anxiety fills the space and the body freezes. The fixer in your life, somewhere along the way, learned to be okay in that uncomfortable in-between space. The not knowing doesn't shut them down, it's just where the work begins. But I want to pause here and be honest about something. Some people who fix everything, emotionally, practically, logistically, for everyone around them, are not doing it from a place of strength. Some of them learned to fix things because it was how they earned their place. The approval was in the solution. Being helpless was at some point in their lives genuinely risky, so their nervous system made a decision: I will never be helpless again. And that looks like capability from the outside, but it's a coping mechanism wearing capability's clothes. The tell is when you ask them to let someone else handle something. They can't relax, they hover, they offer help nobody asked for. An unfixed thing in their environment feels like an unfixed thing inside of them. And then there's the other kind, the person who fixes everything out of genuine curiosity because broken things genuinely fascinate them. The gap between not working and working is one of the most interesting places in the world to them. These people will take apart something they already fixed just to understand it better. They'll explain what went wrong with a level of detail nobody asked for, completely delighted, like they just discovered something beautiful. These are the people who fell in love with competence itself, not the outcome, the process, the figuring out. Spending time around people like that is one of the most recalibrating things you can do for yourself, because what they model, without even meaning to, is that not knowing how to do something is just a temporary state. Broken isn't a permanent condition. You can put your hands on a problem and actually move it. You might be sitting here realizing you're one of these people and you've never really thought about why. Or you might be realizing you're not, and that the idea of being this way feels genuinely foreign to you. And if it's the second one, I want to say something directly to you. The reason you hand your broken things to someone else isn't a character flaw, it's a history, a set of experiences that taught you that problems are things that happen to you rather than the other way around. And that isn't permanent either. Bandura's entire argument is that self-efficacy builds through experience, small wins, tiny moments of I tried and it worked. Not giant heroic fixes, just you tightened the screw, you made the call, you didn't wait, you stayed with the discomfort for one more minute and something moved. That's where it starts, not with becoming a different kind of person, with one small moment of finding out that your hands can actually touch the problem. And when they do, something changes. Not in the problem, in you.